So welcome to the Zoning Board of Appeals public hearing Thursday, March 24th, 2022. Can I have a motion to open the public hearing?
So moved.
And a second, Julia?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So the first of the cases that we will be hearing tonight is case number 3117, an ongoing matter. Post Crossing LLC 104 Post Crossing. Kat, do we have the applicant here to continue their presentation?
Yes,
Mark,
Jolie's
Mark, it's Jolie Sanchez. I'm hosting now.
Oh, thank you, Jolie.
He is. You're welcome. Linda, you're in. You can unmute and start your camera.
Good evening. I have submitted to you a revised plan. I will share my screen and put the plan up on the screen if that's okay. The revised plan that was submitted. Actually, can you all see it?
No.
No.
Not yet, Linda.
Okay, sorry. Let me share screen. Can you see it now?
Not yet. Now we can.
Now you can? All right. I actually have two plans. What is different about this than the former plans is, again, it's pushed up toward the front so that it only requires the same 5-foot variance from the 15-foot required setback that we've been talking about. What's different is we've shrunk the length of the garage, this area, from front to back, by 2.5 feet, and lowered the roof ridge, the ridge of the roof, by 2 feet. So that although, it still needs exactly the same variance relief that it needed before, because the length was, conforming, the square footage of the garage is conforming. But we did this in order to, try to be, try to address the neighbors' concerns. So anyway, we shrunk it as much as we could. One of the purposes of this diagram here that you see with the car in the garage and the 4 bicycles is because my client, his family specifically has that kind of car and 4 bicycles. There are 4 members of the family. And he wanted to make sure that he had enough room to accommodate the 4 bikes and 1 car. And actually it's a small garage. He also shrank the bathroom because that was a concern. So it is now a very utilitarian, just a toilet and a sink and a door from the outside only. And the rest of what was a bathroom space is now designated as a storage bin. That it's the back 2 feet of the garage, which can be used for beach chairs, surfboards, that sort of thing. Because they still have to be able to open car doors and everything along the sides of the garage. So they've worked hard to try to ask for the most minimal relief that is possible. I'd like to switch to another plan, which I just got from the surveyor today. This hasn't been submitted to you to the record yet. It's really not new information. I just got this from the surveyor today. I will submit it for the record, but I just wanted to show you on the survey that the plan is basically the same. This is showing the reduced length of the garage, and it's still a 10-foot setback because that's really the best we can do. You'll recall that it started up being located in the back rear corner of the property, and we had opposition from two neighbors, and in the spirit of asking for the least amount of relief necessary to accomplish the goal, that's why we've now proposed this relocated garage and shrunken garage. I also submitted a neighborhood analysis, not to argue any kind of, not to make any kind of precedence argument. That's not my point. But the point in doing this, and it's up on the screen now, I hope you can all see it, was there was testimony from at least one, maybe more people who neighbors who spoke to the board, who said that accessory structures tucked in the rear and side yards in non-conforming locations was unusual in this neighborhood. And also Julia McCormick, I think at one point a month or so ago, said it would be helpful to see a neighborhood study, particularly of post-crossing. So I did the best I could here. I am not saying that these are all variances that the board granted. That's not the point. My point is that the character of the neighborhood, because it is an older historic neighborhood, is very much characterized by, accessory buildings. Some are pool houses, some are garages. Some of them they're used for different things, but there are a number of garages, including there's a garage on the other side here. It's hard to see, but I drove by. I submitted the survey showing exactly where the garage is on this one. Can you see where I'm pointing? No. Down here.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. There is a garage there. I submitted a survey for the property. It's literally right on the property line next to our neighbor. And there's one right in back of him. Both of these are much closer setbacks than 10 feet away. And as you can see, up in every place where you see an arrow pointing, there's some kind of accessory structure at a non-conforming setback. So again, I'm just trying to make an argument that this is commonly found in the neighborhood. It is a historic neighborhood. There are lots of pre-existing buildings and pre-existing setbacks. And that was really the point of it. I don't want to beat it to death. So I would like to say that I think we've addressed all the criteria before. And probably 2 different times at 2 different meetings, but happy to go through it again. I'm somewhat conscious that you've just expressed a desire for applicants to speed it up a little bit. So I'm trying not to repeat anything that I've said before. Does anybody have any questions about the new things that I've submitted? Any comments?
Julia, do you have any questions
or
or
comments?
Joyce?
I can't hear you, Julia. Julia's me.
I appreciate seeing the aerial view. It's unfortunate. I wish I could have a better sense of the size of the structures that I'm actually looking at from here, because it appears as though some are sheds and some are.
Some may be sheds. Unfortunately, this is the best I can do. Perhaps I can get surveys if I go through all of the files. I got some surveys. I got property record cards, but they will tell you when it's a garage as opposed to a shed. But I can't go back there because it would be trespassing. Would it be helpful to you if I pulled surveys that show exactly what they are? I mean,
I think this should be sufficient. But
Um,
I appreciate you
yeah.
doing the work to show us this.
The other, for example, directly across the street at 77 Elm, that is a huge garage. It's a 2-story garage. It's beautiful. I mean, it's very ornate. It's old. It's sort of Victorian style, sort of goes with this house, and is very in keeping with the neighborhood. And it's right up against the backyard, and the side yard, frankly. But so, you know, you can see, you can see a number of them that do look like garages, and according to the property record cards, are garages. Again, I'm not trying to argue that you should grant it because there's a precedent or something like that. It's just to point out that the character of the neighborhood is generally large houses on generally smaller lots with accessory structures tucked in, you know, where they could fit them. And again, I want to point out again that on our lot, this, as you know, the corner of Elm and Post Crossing has a pre-existing house on it, with the exception of this sunroom that a prior owner put up 2 owners ago. But what I was going to say is that in this zone, the 7.5 zoning district, as long as you have 20,000 square feet of property or less, the setback is 10 feet. That's the required setback. Unfortunately, because of where this house is situated and the fact that there are 2 very large front yards, and the fact that this is a mere 1,000 square feet over 20,000 square feet, we have that 15-foot setback instead of the 10-foot setback, which really kind of predominates here, in my opinion. We think we've worked hard to bring up the garage, so we no longer need a rear yard variance. We've really scaled down the whole thing as much as possible. There's really no way to ask for less variance relief. I think the neighbor's concern, I'll let the neighbor speak for himself. I have a feeling he's here, but most of his issues, I think, I mean, he would agree, I think, that whatever we do is going to require a 5-foot side yard variance if we are to have a modest 1-car garage. I think my client may be listening. They may want to be heard, or there may be others.
Linda, do you want to let us know if your client wishes to be heard? Otherwise, we'll hear from the public.
I don't know if he's in or not. I know he asked for a invitation. I have no way of telling if he actually is registered and on yet. His name is Brian Siegel.
I do not see.
I'm sorry,
anyone.
Martin
Doesn't-
Siegel. Excuse me.
Doesn't
Brian
look like-
Brady. Okay, maybe he's
Oh,
not.
there is a Martin.
Martin, I'm sorry. I got it mixed up. Brian Brady, Martin Siegel. Sorry.
There's a Martin. I'm not sure if that's your,
Martin Siegel is my client.
there's a
And-
Martin, but no, I don't see a last name. And his hand is not up.
Okay.
Because Linda, if it's okay with you, can we hear if there's anybody from the public who
Of course.
would like to speak?
Of course.
Jolie,
All
could
right.
you let us know?
Yes, Joan McGivern is ready to come in.
Okay, can you let Linda exit?
Yeah, I'm bringing Ms. McGivern in, and then I'll take Linda out. Okay. Ms. McGivern, you're in. You can start your camera and your microphone.
We're still in Linda's screen sharing.
Yeah, I'm taking her out.
Okay.
Ms. McGivern, you're in.
Good evening, board members. I'd like to share my screen for a minute, if I could.
Absolutely.
Bear with me. So the study that Linda provided actually highlights the problem here, which is this is a historic district and you will be setting a precedent. The purpose of the zoning code is not to foster further non-compliance or non-conforming structures. Of the 15 properties she surveyed, 3 are pool houses that are placed well in the rear of the property and basically not visible from the street. One's a pergola, also not visible from the street. Of the other 11 garages, 8 or 9 are pre-existing. One is a church. I don't see how that's comparable. It's a multi-structure property. The other is clearly a multi-family dwelling with 2 apartments above a garage. So I just want to emphasize that the study, to the extent it does anything, shows you that you will be furthering non-conforming structures. I also wanted to show you what some of the structures look like. This is one of the garages on the street. This is another of the garages. They're smaller. They're set back from the principal structures. They're not 14 feet high. They're much more modest, proportioned, and they're not as long. I also want to just review again with you briefly, and I don't want to repeat what you've seen already, but briefly, the fact that they've lowered it 2 feet still impacts. I didn't have an opportunity to actually have the architect lower this by 2 feet, but you can imagine it still impacts the side of my client's house. This is without it, this is with it, this is without it, this is with it, this is without, and again, to emphasize that my client's house, which is pre-existing non-conforming structure, is close to this property line so that the garage will basically be right in its face in terms of a side yard perspective. And with that, I think I can stop sharing my screen now unless you want to have any questions.
Do any board members have any questions? Luke, do you have any questions?
No, I'm good. Thanks, Mark.
I believe my client is also on the line. I don't know if he wants to reiterate some of his previous objections. I mean, I understand they moved it up so as to avoid the objections of the other neighbor, but the fact remains it's a large garage. It's 24 feet. It has a bathroom. I mean, with all due respect, it does seem like it's more anticipated use is for the soon-to-be teenage daughters to have a hangout space. I mean, it's just a neighborhood that is the space is just too tight to squeeze this garage in. I don't know how else to say that. I've been through the 5-factor analysis. I won't burden you with repeating it, but we respectfully ask that you deny the application. I understand it's a very well-known architect that's done these drawings, but The fact remains, it's too small a space to squeeze this too big garage into.
Jolie, could you let us know if Mr. Rabin wishes to speak?
He's in the attendee pool, but his hand is not up. But Mr. Holmes' hand has come up. Would you like him to be brought in?
Sure, Jolie, that would be great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good evening, members of the board. Hopefully you can hear me.
Very well, Mr. Holmes.
I've spoken at length at 3 prior hearings, so I'll be very brief today. I just had a few things to add. The first is I do want to compliment the Siegels. They addressed a lot of our issues. And so we are appreciative of that. I'm still opposed because of the effect on the Rabin family. But I do appreciate the effort that they made. My second point would be, I do believe it's within the purview of this board to deny the bathroom and or deny the cupola if you otherwise want to grant the variance. So I would ask you to consider that. And then finally, my last thing would be an issue that I brought up, I think maybe the 3rd time I spoke, which is really addressed to Mr. Wallach, as well as the whole board, right? Which is, I think there is a policy decision here that you all need to make, which is whether you want additional brand new, as opposed to historic, pre-existing non-conforming, whether you want additional outbuildings, additional non-conforming buildings in the tight neighborhood. That's above my pay grade, but I do think it's an appropriate thing for the board to consider. So anyway, those are my additional comments.
And there are, Linda Riley would like to speak again. Would you like to hear from her or?
Sure,
Would you like-
Mr. Holmes, thank you very much.
Linda, you're in.
Okay. I just want to say a couple of things in response to that. One is that I think there's lots of case law about conjecture that somebody might turn a building into something that it's not proposed to be. And that's not, it's not something that the board ought to be considering. And because whether or not they change it at some point in the future, it's going to have to come back to you. It can't be a pool house. It's going to be a garage. Can't be a pool house because we don't have a variance for a pool house. We have only a setback for a garage. And the other thing I want to point out is that this garage is further away from Mr. Rabin's property line than either of the 2 garages that are on either side of him, either to the south or to the west. Both of those garages are closer to him. And I don't know how anyone could know how high those garages are because you just can't know exactly how high the neighbor's garage is. And anyway, there's not a height problem. We're not asking for a height variance, just the side yard setback so they can have the 10-foot setback that was historically applicable here. That's it.
Do any board members have any other questions or concerns they'd like to express? Otherwise, I'll motion to close for all purposes. Is that okay with you, Linda, are you
Well, I guess
complete?
I wish I could get some indication of, I mean, in my view, the height of the garage is irrelevant to your considerations. But if, I wish I could get some indication if it was literally a flat roof garage or something lower, if you would be inclined to grant it. I don't even know if you're inclined to grant it or deny it now. And I don't know whether there's any chance. I don't want to just keep spinning wheels. I don't want to keep repeating myself. The 5-foot setback is unavoidable. But if you tell us that this is a problem, I mean, can there be some colloquy in the board members?
Well, it's hard to consider, hypotheticals. We can only respond to what's presented and then deliberate and
Right.
apply our balancing tests. So you didn't,
Well,
you didn't present a structure that was lower. And
because I think it's irrelevant, because I'm not asking for a height variance. I mean, but what I'm trying to say is he really, really needs and wants a garage. It's something that is a significant goal of his. It was a goal of his when he bought the house. He got some bad advice that he could build it at a 10-foot setback. But we're trying to walk, but the line between respecting the historic neighborhood and the architecture and respecting the neighbors, but also, having satisfied in my mind the criteria for a variance, it would be helpful to hear some deliberations that basically went through the criteria, and if you could somehow say whether or not you think under no circumstances will you grant this 5-foot variance that we need, or maybe you will. Maybe I'm arguing against myself, because maybe.
Well, we have not had the chance to deliberate this. Do any board members want to offer any comments or
in many
Sure.
jurisdictions, the deliberations take place in the public. I'm not sure that there's anything. I mean, it seems to me it's maybe a good idea to air out what the considerations are that you're considering.
Well, no, and we would, have those deliberations publicly. We're just asking whether or not to close the hearing at this point. In other words, have you had a fair and full opportunity to present what you want? We don't want to evolve into, a design meeting, as to what we would approve or not approve. We can only review what you do present to us.
Well, okay, I guess I'm, my client's not in the audience right now, as far as I know. I guess I'm going to ask for another adjournment. If I can't get any indication from you, and possibly change the plans again.
I don't think we should do that. I think we should close and vote.
I'm sorry, Chair. Joan McGivern has her hand up in the attendee pool. Would you like her to be heard?
Sure, I want everybody to have a full opportunity to be heard. So yes, go ahead.
Okay.
Jolie,
Jolie, can you? Thank you.
okay.
I'm so sorry to interrupt, but height is actually an issue. I mean, that was the whole point of showing the view from from my client's house. The fact that my client is saddled on two sides with garages that are also non-conforming is not the point. The point was highlighted by Max Holmes that you have a policy decision to make as to whether or not you want to encourage more non-conforming structures in this rather tight neighborhood, but height is actually an issue for my client, as is the length of the garage. And if they truly just want a garage, why can't they have it 10 feet and no bathroom? I mean, I don't see what the issue is if it's truly just a garage. Most cars are 6 feet and most people aren't more than 7 feet tall. So with that, I close and leave it to your good graces.
Thank you.
Mark, is it possible? I feel like we're just going around and around.
Okay, so why don't I
Having
motion to
dueling
close for all
attorneys.
purposes?
Is there
And,
more information?
I'm
What?
sorry?
I feel like we're just having the plan change every week and having us, asking us to, I don't like how it's going. I would like to close it. I agree with Luke. If there's
Okay, so
any,
I'll make a motion to close for all purposes, close for decision. Can I have a second on that motion?
second,
Second,
And all in favor of closing case number 3117104 Post Crossing for all purposes, please say aye.
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 Okay, so unanimously closed for all purposes, case number 3117104 Post Crossing. And we will move on to the next pending case, which is case number 3116, 375 Ox Pasture Road. Jolie, is the applicant here to
Yes,
present?
Mr. Benincasa is coming in. Mr. Benincasa, you're in. Okay.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Good to see you again. I'm going to share my screen just briefly. So, and I do apologize for the quality of this PDF, but the board should have this in front of them now. We originally asked for a 40-foot setback when 90 is required. That was increased to 44 and then to 50. And then we come to you today with a request that the tennis court be permitted with a 60-foot setback from Mary Lee Drive or a variance of 30 feet. We've had some time to vet this board's concerns with our client. I know the architect Will Minier is on the in the queue. Do you see him there?
We see him, but
Would you like me to bring him in at this point?
That would be great. Thank you very much. And what Will can talk to you about is, the design elements that were considered as far as bringing it even closer to the house.
There we go. Can you hear me? Can you see me? There I am.
There you are, Will. Hi,
Hello,
Will.
everyone. I sort of cut out, I think, when I was getting connected, Carl.
So I was saying, sure, I'll just intro you again.
Yep.
Will's the architect behind this design for the home and the accessory structures. And we did review with our client what it would be like to bring the tennis court into conforming location under this design. And I just wanted you to discuss that. I know you had vetted that.
Yeah, so a couple things. Spoke to you last time. Didn't point out the fact that we didn't treat this as a given or a blank lot. We actually met with the building department when we knew that the client wanted north-south orientation for the tennis court, and that was important, and talked about some of the other the properties. And point out too that we aren't asking for a full-size regulation tennis court. This was a reduced size and for many reasons. I did a little site plan where we moved the tennis court into a conforming location, keeping it in the preferred north-south orientation. Again, non-regulation size, it's still the 50 foot by 111 feet. And it ends up being about 4 feet off the back patio of the house, or 19 feet off the rear of the first floor master bedroom. So it's just not practical. I mean, it is very tight, and it's not like we designed the house trying to fit the tennis court there. After meeting with the building department, we did in fact feel that the tennis court could be pushed back with some relief, and that's why the house sort of evolved how it did. That was all I think I really wanted to share, that we're about 4 feet off of the patio within a conforming location. Not practical.
Could you be more specific about what this is about, talking to the building department, that you could probably do something? Or
no, it wasn't probable. When we saw the setbacks and when we started doing a zoning analysis, we actually did meet with the building department, and they didn't give us any kind of permission or indication or anything, but we pointed out neighbors' properties. There's a handful of tennis courts that are all in a non-conforming location. And they said, sure, that's something you could pursue. That was it.
Thank you.
Okay, so again, there's not much to say here. I think I've been well heard throughout this application as to what makes this property burdened compared to many, and how the half the homes on the southern side of Mary Lee, between Ox Pasture and Mary Lee, have benefited from less relief than we're asking for now. Initially, our request was, when we first came to the building department, it was 35, and then when it got vetted by the building department and with myself and Mr. Minier, we applied at 40, and then we increased to 44, and now we're at then 50, and now we're at 60. So we've really scaled back the request for relief, 20 feet, 50% over the course of these hearings. I think the record is clear as to why we should be, why we feel we should be granted this relief. And I don't know, unless you have questions, I don't know that we need to vet it any further.
Do any board members have any questions, Luke, or?
So it's 33% relief requested now?
So it was it's 90% on front yard setback. We're asking for 30 feet relief. So yes, 33% relief, that's right.
Do you think that's a significant request?
No, not in light of the character of the community, not in light of the relief previously granted, not in light of the burdens on this property, not in light of the preferred design, and again, consideration of the layout and positioning of this lot, in that it's, again, only one other lot would have to pass this tennis court. We are also removing a pool that's closer to the home. We're removing a home that's closer to that neighbor. And we're removing, most importantly, access to this property from Mary Lee, which certainly presents a lot of interference with the community. So given all of on that road and disturbance to that the one neighboring lot impacted by this. So given all of that, we don't think this is overly substantial. But again, that decision is yours.
Joyce, do you have any questions or comments?
No, I think I'm fine. Thank you.
Well, I think the concern that we've had from the beginning, if I was to summarize our meetings, is that were you from the beginning asked to design a house with a tennis court setback 90 feet from the property line, you as an architect could have done that. Would you agree that's something I thought you had said at an earlier meeting, that if those were your proverbial marching orders, you could design a house with a 90-foot setback for the tennis court?
Not with the program requirements of the house that was given to me. A lot of rooms facing the rear of the yard, you know, sort of these two wings. I mean, a different type of house. I mean, potentially, yes.
And just to summarize, and I you know, that's our concern is that if you're working with what we regard as a blank piece of paper, clean slate, or however you want to describe it, there could be a stronger effort to comply with setbacks. We understand that you, no matter what, would require variance relief because the tennis court will be in the front yard because you have two front yards. But then our challenge is how determined or how much effort was made by the applicant to conform with the 90-foot setback. So that's our decision. But, you know,
Right.
So I think from the start, one of the board members had suggested perhaps a different design. What we have here essentially is, no, we're going to keep the building design, but we will slide the tennis court from 40 to 60 feet back. And that seems to be the applicant's position. In that case, yes, we probably don't have any more questions, and we could probably, you know, close this hearing for decision.
Yeah, if I could add one thing, so a regulation size tennis court in 90 foot off the back to the front principal setback, you know, leaves about 80 feet. I mean, that is not a lot of room for a house to go. So it would maybe end up being a house that's, you know, L-shaped or protruding into the backyard more, and you're kind of building a house around a tennis court. Not desirable. I mean, not easy, no, especially again with this program and this look that we had in mind.
Will, do you say that with the tennis court running north-south?
From day one, the tennis court was preferred to be north-south. Yes, that's always been the goal.
Yeah, so I agree. If you want it to comply and it's north-south, it's an L-shaped house. But, you know, I still think that if it rotated 90 degrees and was pushed right up against the rear yard setback and the house was a little more U-shaped than H-shaped, then you've got that swimming pool in the courtyard created by the U-shape of the house, and you've got plenty of lawn before the tennis court.
Yeah, again, north-south orientation was sort of a requirement, so that's where we went.
Well, there are reasons for preferred north-south orientation.
Yeah, I mean, it's not, it's sun oriented. I mean, you know, obviously, if you're on the east side of the court looking west, you have a hard time in the evening with sun in your eyes, and vice versa in the morning. The north-south orientation sort of allows the most playing time, the least sun in your eyes. I mean, it's sort of the preferred orientation for a tennis court. And we're not regulation size again. You know, we are a reduced size, which it's small. It's very tight tennis court.
Could you put the survey up again, Will? Do you mind? Can you, or
It was mine. I'll put it
Yeah.
up, sure. Did you see it, Mark?
yes. So what were you saying? I wasn't following your math right away. I didn't have this in front of me, but you have a property that's 372 feet deep.
Mm-hmm.
So, Will, I think you were saying something about not being able to locate the tennis court north-south and comply with setbacks. Could you take me through that math again?
No, I don't think I said you couldn't do it. the house would need to be an L-shaped house, I think, as Luke said. It's not the program that I was giving. If we take this court and slide it to the house, what I said is it's approximately 4 feet off of that back patio. I did an illustration which I sent to Carl. I don't know if he has it easily accessible. It's a schematic site plan that I did just as an exercise to show the court. Yep, that's the east-west one.
It's the
And
east-west.
how far is that from the property line if it runs east-west?
That diagram was in a conforming location. That was to show that you know, if we don't get a variance and the client wants a tennis court, that's how it could lay out.
Yeah, do that.
And so then, Carl, if you go to the north-south one, which I think is the next one.
I don't know if I'm not sure if I have that readily available. Hold on. Let me look.
In a conforming location, that's where it's 4 foot off of the house.
Yes, here it
Yes.
is. Hold on. This one, well,
Right. Yeah, so this again is keeping the tennis court in the preferred orientation and putting it in a conforming location. You'll see with the reduced size court, we're 4 feet off of that back patio right there. So
It's a little small on this side of things, but you're showing that tennis court is 90 feet back from the property line?
yes, yeah, the tennis court surface is 90 feet back from, yeah.
but right up against the house. There's virtually no space between it.
And if you ran it east-west, then you also comply with the 90-foot setback? I couldn't read the small print, the fine print on the earlier survey.
Yes, if we wanted east-west, we are compliant. However, it's not preferable given the issues with the sunset and sunrise. And again, it's also about what exists and has generally been deemed permissible in this community, and that's why we are asking for this. And you know, I understand the position with we're given a blank slate, but again, I think we should be cognizant of the fact that we are doing the right thing in coming to you before we've built anything. We could have built this house, built that pool, and said it's there. We have no other choice.
Mr. Benincasa, I don't think that would actually fly. People, the building department drives around.
No. What
I'm not
he's
saying
is
built
that-
it without relief. I'm saying built what's the conforming structures and then ask for a variance for the tennis court with them in place. And then, you know, you wouldn't be able to say the blank slate argument. And I understand your position. I just want, you know, I would just want to be aware of why we did it the way we did. And perhaps, you know, it's not well advised. We should have built first.
Honestly, I think we're more onto that than people used to be, so I'm not sure that would have actually.
Whatever the case may be, but the blank slate positioning could create a scenario where applicants are more likely to build first and then ask for relief. But again, I think we've made our arguments, and I'm happy with the application we put forth. And yeah, I don't, at this point, I don't think there's any further the applicant's willing to go. So I think we would be supportive of closing and putting over for a decision at this point.
Okay,
Fantastic.
so I'll motion to close case number 3116, 375 Ox Pasture Road for all purposes. Do I have a second on that?
Second,
Second.
And then all in favor, can I see hands?
well, we got it.
All in favor of closing case number 3116, 375 Ox Pasture Road for all purposes?
Aye.
Aye.
Joyce?
All I can see is Carl's screen, Benicasa's screen.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm still sharing. Sorry about that.
I,
And Luke, are you voting in favor of closing case number?
I'm voting in favor of closing.
Okay. And, okay, so unanimous to close case number 3116, 375 Ox Pasture Road.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
So just looking at case number 3125, it appears on the agenda that the applicant requests adjournment to May 26, 2022. Alex, we may want to update this because I believe we have a board resolution requesting that the applicant also renotice and re-advertise.
That's right, and we did communicate that to the applicant, and we were looking for a copy of the policy on adjournments to share with them.
Okay. And then I have a motion to accept the applicant's request in case number 3127, 220 Hampton Road. The applicant requests an adjournment to April 19th, 2022. Can I have a second on that motion?
Second.
And all in favor of adjourning case number 3127, 220 Hampton Road, adjourning that case to April 19th, 2022, say aye.
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 Okay, so that's unanimous. And then we can move on to new cases. We have case number 3132 as our first new case. Lee, I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly, Kruder, 370 Great Plains Lane. And this was the application where we received a request for adjournment an hour before the meeting or so, but we thought we might still have an opportunity to discuss with our consultant any initial concerns and also find out the reason for the requested adjournment. If Chick, do you know why the applicant requested an adjournment?
Hi, everyone. Yes, a couple of things. I was able to text with the applicant. Apparently there was a family emergency that Melissa was pulled away to attend. But I also have some additional info that I visited the site on Tuesday and I did speak with the applicant. This is Melissa Dedovich from Peconic Environmental. And one of the things that we noted was that the wetland delineation was from 1996, at least on the plan. But apparently there was some delineation that was done at a later date. And they staked it in the field. And it actually looks as though the wetlands are closer to the edge of the dug pond. So they had at least intended to delineate a revised wetlands line, which to me is appropriate because anything that we have is quite old. Have that plotted on the plan and use that for design and continued permitting. I do expect that it will shift the wetlands farther away. And I think probably the reason is because this dug pond was surrounded with Phragmites at one point and was probably impenetrable, but was not characteristic of wetland vegetation. So again, we'll get an accurate wetland line depicted and use that for planning. I can also discuss technical aspects of the project if you want to, if that's appropriate at this time. I have reviewed it and had some ideas because there is a minimal setback and I feel it would be beneficial to explore options to try and maximize the setback. But that's up to you if you want to get into that detail.
No, we would like to hear your thoughts. We're going to keep it open for all purposes so that the applicant will have a full opportunity to respond to any of your concerns, but we did think it might be helpful as long as we're here to move things forward.
Sure. Is my screen visible?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So this is the location of the subject property. It's 370 Great Plains Road on the south side. I think a little background is really useful. This site was it's a dug lagoon, a dug pond. And when you look back at the historic aerials, it was dug between 1962 and 1978. And then through the years, it's very similar. What's also very informative and interesting to me is that it is the headwaters of Taylor Creek. To the south here is Taylor Creek, going under, forget if that's going under the road, and then again terminating just before you get to Ox Pasture Road. So even though it is dug, it is quite sensitive. There is a surface water connection. And so I think it's important that, you know, we look at this as we do all our applications under Chapter 116 to look to maximize setbacks and, you know, conform as much as possible as we can to the code. Is this screen now visible?
Yes, we see the screen.
Okay, so this is the site plan.
Chick,
we
it's
still have
it's
the
still the
aerial.
aerial photo.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. I did need to do a new share. There we go. So this is the site plan. You can see right here that there is a 38.4 foot setback from the wetlands, which will move a little bit. It's going to be more down here where the fence is, to this corner of the porch. Also, in looking at the area, Mark, you and I discussed this, but you know, the Zoning Board of Appeals does have the ability to vary front yard setbacks if it will benefit the wetlands. This plan currently shows a 100-foot setback. The 125-foot setback would be, you know, back in here, and that's shown right here. And 150-foot, which is the structure setback, would put this house in the street. So we know that that's not realistic. We do know that they're demolishing the house and will essentially start with a blank slate, but full compliance, strict compliance is definitely not possible here. When I looked at the setbacks on both sides of Ox Pasture Road, the smallest setback that I found is the house to the east, which is about 75 feet. So again, this board can vary, but they're meeting the 80-foot setback. I don't know your comfort level. This would be for discussion, but you know, my sense was it may not make sense to go less than the minimal setback that currently exists. And there may be other ways to maximize the wetland setback from the proposed structure. So if they were to seek a small setback, if they were to remove this proposed porch or relocate it somewhere, and again, this is for deliberation and you know, input from this board, but you're asking for my input. Instead of 38.4 feet, I think they should really be trying to get at least a 45-foot natural buffer, and that the house should be at least 55 feet from the wetlands. I would also look to try and kind of average the setback, you know, the actual natural buffer. And because Taylor Creek, you know, there's actually Phragmites and some invasive species, but it's part of the swale that leads to Taylor Creek. It's not really wetland, but, you know, if they were to kind of square off a buffer and not just have a minimum 30-foot buffer, but expand it where it's a minimum of 45 feet, but would be aligned somewhat like this, that would be a tremendous benefit to the wetlands. They could certainly plant that. I don't think it's a hardship to their yard area. And it would really benefit this pond and establish natural vegetation for habitat, filtering of pollutants, and remove potential lawn area that slopes toward the wetlands. So those were some of my thoughts. We can certainly discuss it, and at your discretion, I can share that with the applicant if those are some ideas that you'd like to consider, or if you have other things that we should be talking about. But that's my input at this time.
So Chick, Susan Stevenson.
Yes,
The laundry list of variances is mind-boggling to me here. There are, I don't see how, I don't know, I feel like, how could this even be requested almost? It's so elaborate.
Well, it's because there is an existing house on the property. That house is ghosted in here. I can pull up a survey or go to the aerial, but right here, where my cursor is, if you see that,
Yeah, okay, I do.
where the existing structure is.
I see it.
So they're basically moving the house back, removing this house. But as I said, full compliance would put it out in the street. And a lot of those variances that you see listed on the agenda are things like, well, we can go to it, but they're all the accessories and appurtenances that are associated with the residence that can't meet the setbacks because it's an existing very small lot. And here's the list. It's a small lot, and all of those things would need to be in the street in order to comply. So here's the list. There's an existing swimming pool. They're not changing that. They're not proposing to demolish it. There is a pool terrace. That's also existing. There's a pergola, and you go, outdoor kitchen to be located 100 feet where 150 is required. As I said, all of these would have to be out in the street to meet the structure setback, and somewhere very close to Ox Pasture Road to meet the landscape setback. So I think that's the reason why we have a large list. Building department was very thorough in identifying these. But if the property is going to be developed, I don't know how much flexibility we have. We can certainly look at each one of these and try and get them to maximize them, but they're not going to conform.
Thank you.
May I
I
ask,
believe this is a special permit rather than a variance.
It's a mixture.
Is that Alex?
Yes.
Yeah, so chapter 116 is different than a variance. We don't meet the test. There's setbacks and we consider them and issue permits, but it's not quite the same standard that's applied.
Right. Yeah, I just wanted to point that out, not including the setback variance that is included as part of this application, which I think is also listed on the agenda, I believe at the top,
That's correct.
separate and apart from the wetlands.
So Chick, I would have this question. On one of the surveys, an earlier survey, they showed a 50-foot easement. I think they referred to it as a conservation easement, running essentially north-south. Did you see that?
Let me see if I can pull that up.
Can I just ask for a point of clarification? Chick, when you're talking about it being on Ox Pasture, do you mean Ox Pasture or do you mean Great Plains Road?
Oh, so sorry. I flagged another wetland on Ox Pasture. It's
Oh.
Great Road, 370 Great Plains.
So when you're talking about being out in the road and then you've been saying Ox Pasture, what you really mean to be saying is Great Plains, correct?
My sincere apologies. Thank you.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that we're all talking the same thing.
I was out there Tuesday and I was at both locations, so my thanks.
Got it.
I'm looking, Mark, at the
So if you look at the earlier survey, it's called Dorothy Higgins Situate. The date on it is 1996. Did you notice that? And it says 50-foot wide natural landscaped area.
I don't see that in the information that was sent to me for the permit. I'm sorry to say.
It was attached to the ZBA 1997 variance. So it was in our package.
Interesting. Yeah, I'm not seeing it in my folder. It's certainly something that the applicant, is it maybe part of the application? Let me just check.
It is part of, well, it's part of the application we received.
It's not on the form or attached to that. I don't know if
I'm
Alex,
looking to see if it's in the Dropbox. I can show it on the screen. I'm trying to see if it's if we have it here. I think I may have what you're looking for. Let me see if I can share my screen if that's helpful.
sure.
Chick, I think we may need to stop screen sharing for me to do that. Mr. Chair, is this what you're referring to?
Yes. What is that, Chick, that says 50-foot natural landscaped area?
Can you zoom in, Alex?
Yeah,
Is
I
that in
believe
the
that-
right? Yeah,
It has something to do with the fact that the little creek continues north up along there.
yes. So that can certainly be part of this expanded buffer area.
I mean, is that a title question? Is that something that was imposed by the ZBA in connection with an earlier variance? In other words, how did that come about?
I don't have
Where
the,
did it go on our plans?
yeah, I don't have the history on that, but we can certainly research that with the building department.
But Chick, when they do put these things in sometimes, would it just be ignored? What happened to it? You don't know.
Yeah, I don't have the history on it. But we'll pull the full file and
So
Take a
the
look.
theory would be, though, that it's somehow demarcated not to be having any structures, but to be landscape only. Is that right?
I can't quite read the exact terminology.
I believe what it says here on the plans is natural landscape area. And it doesn't say anything about an easement unless I'm looking in the wrong spot.
Does that say area?
Let me see if I'm able to zoom in.
It looks like Argo.
Chick, does the term dredged in the dredged pond confer any sort of difference or something rather than just pond or small lake?
Just the fact that, as I showed in the aerial photographs, in the 60s, there was no pond there. There was
Right.
a swale that led to Taylor Creek.
Right.
And so it has been excavated, dredged, dug, all
Man-made.
terms, man-made.
Mhm.
So we can certainly look into that 50-foot wide natural area. We do have a deed in the file, and we can try and research what the origin of that particular setback is. And that would certainly be an area to potentially include in that expanded buffer that I depicted before, if it's appropriate.
Well, what's the purpose of that drainage easement?
Probably the alignment, again, of a depression that conveys stormwater from Great Plains Road to the south. Those are fairly common. I've seen them on Meadowmere and in other areas in the village.
Yeah, but aren't they all leading back to the same water source? Meadow here, it's all the same.
I see that it says easement next to the natural landscaped area. Have we escaped notice? and then drainage. What is all this?
It's a drainage easement. Those are fairly
Oh,
common.
okay, I got it.
And it's on private property. It's not village land. But it's really just to prevent flooding on Great Plains Road and for the Highway Department, DPW to be able to go in there and maintain it if necessary. To my knowledge, it hasn't been. And let me just take a look at the current survey. It looks as though it's still shown on the current survey as a drainage easement. So it's just to have access to make sure it doesn't get blocked so that the road doesn't flood.
And Chick, is that on the neighboring property?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, and I'll defer to you, from an environmental point of view, is that perhaps the reason why you would have a buffer so that, is this a kind of pathway for stormwater to go south into the waterways?
Yes. Yep. Alex is sharing, but if we go back to the aerial photograph, you can see that, there is some vegetation there. It is invasive. It wasn't flagged as wetlands previously, but it is a kind of a low-lying area that communicates stormwater.
It seems like there was a special permit issued in 1997 for the former owner, Dorothy Higgins, for her to do her pool. And that paperwork there might give some clues to that 50-foot wide buffer. It might have been part of the approval.
I will pull all of that material. Again, we don't have the benefit of the applicant's presentation tonight, and so these are questions that they might typically answer. But I wanted to at least give you the benefit of some of my thoughts on the review to date.
Great.
No, that's great. Thank you.
Very helpful.
Julia, do you have any other questions, or Joyce, while we have Chick here?
Not at this time.
So Chick, hey, just one final. So we come across properties like this, which are kind of legally and technically unbuildable when you do the water front setback, right? So you would prefer, as our consultant, to see front yard relief and to move as far away as possible from the wetlands. All other things being equal.
Yes, yeah, I would say so. We could be getting into legal territory potentially, but a piece of property such as this with a home on it, I think you would look to maximize setbacks and recognize that even as a clean slate, it's impossible to meet the setbacks. And so, what are the choices? I think it's to maximize those setbacks, protect the environment, improve the situation, and recognize that full compliance may not be feasible.
So Luke, one of the conversations I had with Chick, just to make it public, is that, the board, I would say can be flexible and perhaps should be flexible on balance in protecting the waterways, the bays, et cetera, and on balance could grant front yard variances so as to have the new construction built further away from wetland setbacks, and perhaps as frankly as far as I'm concerned, as close as 60 feet to the road. But that that's just my suggestion, that on balance, it's within our purview to be flexible about front yard setbacks so as to protect the wetlands.
Yeah, I mean, I'm curious to hear Melissa Dedovich's presentation. I'm sure she's going to give a great one, but yeah, even 60 feet as a front yard would give you much more room to spread out east-west on the property and really protect the southern portions along the pond.
And that
But
would
let-
just,
Yeah, I'm sorry. I
15
mean,
that would just be 15 feet less than the house to the east and still a very substantial setback. And that would, that would get you up to perhaps as much as 60 feet of natural buffer from the wetlands, which would be a great improvement. Something that's certainly, we can document as being a significant net benefit.
okay, let's check. Thank you very much. So let's motion to adjourn case number 3132, 370 Great Plains Lane for all purposes. And do I have a second on that?
Second,
And all in favor?
aye.
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 So we'll move on to the next
very
new
much,
case.
everyone.
which is- Thank you, Chick.
Thanks, Chick.
Okay, have a good evening.
Good night, Chick.
Thank you.
We'll move on to case number 3110, 54 North Main Street. Is the applicant here?
Yes, Mr. Carmentano is coming in. Mr. Carmentano, you can turn on your camera and there you go.
It's actually Armentano. It's the C is my middle initial, but for the record, John Armentano. That's all right. Not a problem. I'm John Armentano. I'm an attorney with Farrell Fritz on behalf of the applicant North Main Street LLC. We're here to present a revised application. If I could share my screen, that would. So this is the property. As you know, it's located at 54 North Main Street. It is 1.6 acres. It is already improved with a 5,384 square foot multi-tenant office building in the front and a 2,400 square foot one-story wood shop in the rear. The property is now zoned R20 and the rear of the property is zoned R7.5. The office and the wood shop have been in existence since the 70s and are confirmed non-conforming uses that were established prior to the residential zoning on the site. This matter was previously heard before you on several occasions. It was first heard on June 24th, 21, with the concept of a flag lot here. This is a subdivision into two lots, with the concept being the removal of the wood shop in the rear, and the original concept that was preferred by the planning board was a flag lot. That was modified by input from this board and staff to consider the concept of an easement. So that would be the removal of the flag to replace it with what's outlined here, just for, we've annotated it for ease of reference with an easement. That matter was to have been heard on December 12th of 2021. It was adjourned due to a publication issue to February of 2022. That was again adjourned to this hearing tonight because there was a recent modification of the denial letter by the building department on February 22nd, 2022. So in an abundance of caution and to keep the record completely clean, we renoticed the application to track the call of the denial of the building department letter, which was drafted on February 22nd, 2022. So tonight we're here to take you through what I think you've seen multiple times. The concept here is to allow the existing conditions to remain. The reason that these are triggering variances is because of the new lot being created. The yield of this property is 3 residential lots. My client is proposing just one residential use that would therefore reduce the non-conforming status of the application, and to the other variances that are triggered are a result of the flag not being a flag lot, but being an easement. So we are seeking relief from the Village Code section 116-11 for side yard for, and I just marked this up so you can, I'm sorry. So you can see this is the existing building. I can zoom in, this is, the lot sizes are in compliance, lot 2 and lot 1 are in compliance. The setback on the north side is an existing setback of 6.4, where the required is 23. The south setback from the existing building is 18, when it is supposed to be 23, which then generates an additional variance because of the total side yard setback of, which is required to be 57.54, but that is reduced to 24.4. Those are the variances necessary to maintain the existing conditions. I would argue that these are pre-existing non-conforming setbacks that we would still be entitled to, but in order to legalize these existing conditions, relief from the zoning code is preferred. The only variance then that is required for lot 1, which is a conforming lot in size, would be the 0 lot width because of its location in the rear without any frontage. So we have 0 frontage, but that's obvious because it's in the rear and there is no ability to reach the main street, but for the easement, so the required 40-foot width requires a variance to be 0, although that's numerically significant. It's not what we would consider significant based on the conditions that we are proposing. Obviously, going through the balancing test, the granting of this variance will not produce an undesirable change in the neighborhood. We would believe this is an improvement. We are removing one nonconformity. We are consistent with the residential uses on the property in the rear. This is in keeping with the character of the neighborhood. The benefit to the applicant cannot be achieved by any other method other than the granting of these easements, by the granting of the easement, which is triggering the variance for lot 1. And we would offer that the other variances along the lot 2's side yard are existing conditions. So there really is no change in the community whatsoever. You really won't see any change. The lot 1 in the rear will be using an existing driveway. It'll just become an easement for access. These are not substantial variances given the condition that this site is and the prior pre-existing non-conforming status. Obviously, this is a type 2 action, therefore there is no environmental impact created by this, and it's a type 2 action. And again, this is not self-created. These are pre-existing conditions that generate the majority of the variances. I would say that the 3 of the 4 variances are generated by the existing structure that has been approved for its construction back in the 70s. And we don't believe there's any detriment, and we believe there is an improvement we're not seeking the full yield of the property. So it's our position that we are, minimizing any, if any, impacts to the community based on the variances that we are requesting.
I think this is all pretty reasonable. We've gone over this a lot of times.
Yes.
Can you show us the before and after of the building department denial letters? Because yes, at one point we had not thought this would require as many variance requests as it does now. So we do have, just to put into the record what happened there, if you don't mind.
Sure, I can read them into the record. I don't have them scanned per se, but I can. What I have from the record that I've received, the application in in June of 2021 was for a flag lot. There were 2 variances at that time. One was for the 0 setback. So in putting the flag here, the position of the building department was there were 2 variances. The one variance was that this lot, this south setback to the building, I can zoom in, would have been reduced to 0 because it's right on the corner. So that was the 0 setback. The other variance, there seemed to be confusion with there's, and that was triggering then a sky plane variance. It seemed to be, I was not the attorney presenting at that time, so I'm filling in on that historical detail. That was a variance for the sky plane that is removed, or because this is no longer a lot line. And the other variance was then a variance for lot width. For lot 1, the flag is less than the 70-foot requirement. So that flag was a 20-foot flag. So there was a reduction from the width of lot 1 from 70 to 20. You know, the evolution. So then the evolution of the application was the removal of the flag. That generated more variances actually, because what I think happened is then the building department picked up this variance to the north, which then triggers the reality of this variance to the south, which when you put it together, which was revealed to the building department in February of 2022, they added the total side yard variance requirement. So existing conditions were always the same. The variances just seem to be clarified and seem to trigger more variances. But the reality is the changes did not change. Nothing has.
You didn't change your application at all. It's just initially, I think the building department didn't call out that you needed those variances, and later on, they proposed that you did.
That is correct. Yes.
Even though it's non-conforming.
That is correct.
What's the benefit to the applicant?
Well, it's the ability to maintain this structure as it is. The benefit to the applicant is also to have the ability to have a residence in the rear. My understanding is it will be offered to a family member, but other than that, I think the ability to have a residential lot in the community of Southampton is an obvious benefit to the applicant. And it is to, the benefit to the community is we are not seeking the further yield that we can on this property. But the benefit to the applicant is to continue the use of his property and to remove this wood shop and convert it into, this will all be removed and this will be a residential house in conformity with the zoning code.
Do any board members have any questions, Julia, Joyce, or Luke?
Not at this time.
No, not for me. Thank you.
Julia, do you have anything? Because I would motion to close this for decision.
I'm ready to close.
Mr. Chairman, I just don't know if there was anybody in the public tonight.
Thank you for reminding me. Is there, Jolie, anybody in the public who wishes to be heard?
I don't see any hands up, no.
Okay, so I'll motion to close for decision, case number 3110, 54 North Main Street. Could I have a second on that?
Second.
And all in favor of closing case number 3110, 54 North Main Street? Aye.
Aye.
So that's unanimous. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much. Have a good night.
So we'll go to our next new case, which is case number 3129, 148 Peloton Street. Is the applicant here to present, Jolie?
If you're here for Peloton Street, please raise your hand. Yes. Chris Biba is coming in. Mr. Biba, you're in.
Hi there, how are you?
Good, good. You are,
My name's Chris Biba. I work with Phil Rapp Construction. We are the general contractor that's working with our client here at 148 Peloton. Our desire is to do a small dormer extension on this house. This house is a very small cape. The interior dimensions, I think it's less than 1,100 square feet total with both floors. The upstairs of this house is a little less than 7-foot ceilings, and there's no room in their bathroom to have a shower. So let me, if you allow me to screen share, I can, okay, actually, let me see. So I'll show you a little bit of what we are thinking. So this is the existing plot with the 2 extensions on each side of the existing dormer. The property line, the house is obviously non-conforming already. It's built in the 20s. It's only 9.1 feet from the property line. Actually 8.4 feet from the corner of the house to the property line. So there's 2 variance issues that we run into there: the side yard setback and the pyramid line. So give you the elevation view of what we're planning. So you can see the property line, pyramid line. The dormer extends 5.4 feet past the property pyramid and extends 5.4 feet, which ends up being 188 cubic feet total with the 2 different sides. As far as matching the neighborhood, it is a very small extension that will barely change the look of the house. I do think it will actually improve the look of the house. Right now, the dormer that is on there is very small and kind of looks strange. So extending it farther will actually conform very much so with the pool house that is facing these windows 2 houses down. That has a very similar dormer to what we want to do. As I said, the head height in the bathroom is so low that right now there is a tub right here that will be removed, and we will be putting a standing shower. The thought in my head as to why this is such a necessary thing, the 2 owners of the house are getting older, and the stairs right here are extremely steep. The bathroom is not adequate for them to get up in the morning and use the shower, and to walk down these stairs, it could be an issue. I think it's a big necessity for them to be able to have a shower in their bathroom, as well as adding a small closet in their master bedroom, which is not possible right now. So yeah, that's what we want to do.
Chris, do you know how the current residence was built so close to the property lines initially? Was there a subdivision of some sort, or it does seem like this is sited in an unusual location for the property?
Yes, this was the original house on a very big lot that was split many times. I know it was split at least into 3 lots. This house was built in 1920. I don't think it was originally a subdivision. I'm not 100% sure of the history of it, but it was definitely just placed wherever they wanted on the property. It didn't seem to have much rhyme or reason.
Can you go back to the survey just to show where it's placed? Oh, there it is. Okay.
So I edited this, or this was edited a little bit. There's actually, this is a flag lot. From this point on, there's a 20-foot wide driveway that's 108 feet long that runs out this way. If you want, I can pull up the survey, the actual survey, to see that better. See if I can find it. There's a little better idea.
No, that's very helpful to see.
And Mr. Chairman, I'll point out that because this is a flag lot, it's not getting the benefit of the 5-foot for side yard setbacks for the pyramid lines, which is why the pyramid lines are drawn the way that they are on the plans.
So
Alex,
if
help me
it
out with
wasn't a
that.
flag lot, we would be measuring the pyramid law from 5 feet vertical.
I believe that's right, depending on the zoning district, but that does not apply to flag lots.
So if it wasn't a flag lot, I would be in the pyramid plane by inches.
Do any board members have any questions or comments?
No.
Julia, do you have any questions?
I'm not sure. Ask everybody else and I'll know though.
Joyce, do you have any questions?
I don't think so.
And Susan?
No, it's a weird setup, but
It's a very,
it really is. It's confounding, but the house
Chris,
is.
do you have
so
any
small.
photos? Do you have any photos of the existing house?
I don't think I have any on my computer. I mean, if you want, I can email them to myself from my phone. Might take a little bit.
in some ways, I think this tells a better story than actually seeing it. I don't have any additional questions, Mark.
If it's helpful, I am able to pull up ortho imagery if anybody would like to see.
That would be great. Thank you.
I'll stop sharing.
Can everyone see the screen? So I'm able to zoom in and rotate if that's helpful, but this is the house here. You can see it in relation to Peloton Street. And I believe these are the dormers that are being expanded. Is that right, Chris?
It's just the one side, the left side, closer to the property line that's getting expanded.
Could you just pull back out again? I'm quite interested in it, how, if it would affect anyone.
Sure.
Not in, out. There we go. Thank you. Wow, that is something. Thank you.
No problem.
Yeah, it looks like to the east, is that one separate lot? That looks like a very narrow lot to the east. That.
Oh.
That one to the west?
Yeah, no, you've got it, 138.
Yeah, 138 is an extremely narrow lot.
So it's their backyard to everybody's point. I think it affects that neighbor less than it might have had the two houses been side by side. And I don't think those houses will ever be side by side.
Yeah, the two houses over is a pool house. I don't think there's much that you would even see this house from.
Right, that's enough, it's fine for me. I mean, I get it.
It doesn't seem like a big ask to me, but I just want everybody to have the visuals that they need.
I agree. I'd be ready to close it.
I agree with that. I'm ready to close it.
Is there any explanation for like the configuration, like not, well, this house, but then the other ones that you just showed, those narrow lots? Does anyone is there any explanation for that?
So as far as I know, 148 and 134 were basically the original houses on the block. They've been around since the 20s. Everything else has been more recent. 134 was a farmhouse with everything behind it being farmland. And 148, I think everything to the east of it was farmland. So I think they just kind of dropped it there.
I'm gonna go look again. There's sort of shacks or something stacked up behind some fences, and I just don't, I can't imagine.
This is if you can see this is a 1962 aerial. I was trying to pull up the history here in case that sheds light on the configuration.
It does, somewhat. Wow.
Yeah, but as of 1962, you still had the very narrow lot to the east.
And was that a pond there to the east?
It's not there now. It looks like a pond.
I thought so too, but it does look wet.
I mean,
There
I
was
know that
nothing on the south side of the street.
Yeah, we actually fully renovated 134 not too long ago, and that is their backyard. There's definitely not a pond there now.
Okay, so it sounds like we all agree that we could close this.
Yeah, I'll motion to close.
Mr. Chairman, I
Yeah.
just wanted to check to see if anybody.
Let's see
in the
if
public-
anybody from the neighborhood wants to be heard. Jolie, is there anybody in the neighborhood who wishes to be heard?
No, there's no one.
Okay, so I'll motion to close for decision, case number 3129, 148 Peloton Street. And can I have a second?
Second,
And all in favor, say aye.
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 We should be on, oh, here.
Aye.
Aye.
Joyce is aye. Julia, your aye?
Aye.
Okay, so it's unanimous. We'll close it for decision and thank you very much.
Thank you.
We're going to move on to case number 3131, 40 Meadow Lane, Smithtown Partners. Jolie, do you know if the applicant is here to present?
Yes. Mr. Sedlensky
Mhm.
and the architects are here as well, so.
Good evening, everyone. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Hi.
Yes, very much.
Hi, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Michael Smolensky, 860 Montauk Highway, Watermill, 11976 for the applicant, Smithtown Partners. I'm joined tonight by Josh Rosenzweig from Austin Patterson Diston, who's our architect. If you could let Josh share his screen, if that's at all possible. And Josh, if you can just put up the just have the renderings ready. So the application before us is for the installation of an elevator and modifications to the building in order to allow for the installation of an elevator. This property is located at 40 Meadow Lane. It was built in 2017. And this board was involved in making a determination as to and litigation in regards to the original construction and permitting of this building. The top ridge height as it currently sits is 53 feet. That was found by this board and upheld in a Supreme Court action to be conforming to the code at the time for the height. After the property's been built, the elements that we're asking for relief for tonight, both from the height perspective and the pyramid perspective, were both added to the code after this property was built. And the purpose of this project is to add a mobility access elevator that will allow access to all 2.5 stories of the property. If you see the picture ahead of you, that is the top is the existing elevations, as you can see them from Meadow Lane as you go around the corner. And the bottom pictures detail the 2 dormers that are being added to accommodate access for the elevator. The elevator is actually going on the west side, or the right side of the picture. The one on the left is for mechanicals and is there for symmetry. We previously made application to the Architecture Review Board and were granted an approval from that board, saying the design as we're presenting it to you tonight was appropriate for the historic district. We made our application and went through it with them. So let me just walk you through the plan. What the plan currently does is slide the front gable, the triangular front, forward about 3 feet to allow us to tuck an elevator behind that. And then it pulls the balconies forward and allows the elevator to go up behind that front gable. So the front gable actually comes forward 3 feet. That doesn't require any front yard relief. We're still maintaining the proper front yard setback. However, because of the addition of both the 33-degree pyramid law, as well as the enhanced height restriction for FEMA flood zone area, we require height variance for the building, both. So we are not going any taller than the 53 feet. We will maintain the 53-foot height of the building as it currently sits. The dormers are well below that 53-foot top height. But they still go over top of the new 46-foot height requirement that this board, that now is the zoning code for a narrow lot in a flood zone area. So that is what we're trying to accomplish. In our application to the Architecture Review Board, we went through a number of different alternatives to try to find the right fit. But this was determined to be the best fit and the most appropriate course of action for putting the elevator in. No matter where we put the elevator in, we would be in front of this board for relief, because as you can see, the existing structure is significantly been changed. The limits on the building have been significantly changed since it was built by the zoning code. This is an application to put that into effect. We did discuss moving the elevator inside the structure, but in order to do that, we still would require relief from the board for the height variance and for the changes above the pyramid and height restrictions. And we are very limited in doing so because of the post-tension concrete that's used in the floors, the construction method that was used. They have rebar in the flooring that in order to pierce that, we would basically have to build an internal support column. This is a picture of the internal rebar that's in the floors. In the design of the house, in order to keep the vistas open to the ocean, we used a construction methodology that has rebar that's under tension inside the poured concrete. So in order to make the changes, we would basically have to create a concrete shell, drill down new helix pilings to go down and down underneath and support that, and then try to build that in. It's not a very it would tremendously change the interiors of the house, and it would change. It would be extraordinarily expensive and would be impractical when there's an option to put the elevator on the outside, just sliding the facade forward those 3 feet. And either of those two would require relief from this board because of the situation we're in, because the changes to the code after the construction of the building. So going through the test for the, actually, let me just ask if the board has any questions before I go through the test for the variance, if anyone has any questions.
What was the pyramid law prior to the new 33-degree rule?
This was built, I believe, before the this was built prior to the pyramid law being in effect. There was the height restriction.
So there was no pyramid law whatsoever at the time?
I don't believe so. In 2000, I think it was added into the old pyramid law was added in 2017 after this was permitted.
Alex, I don't think that's true, is it?
I would have to double check on that. Obviously 2017 predates me a little bit. So I'd have to see when that was added to the code.
Well, I was on the other board. I don't know. There is no other. So to me, the question is, you're expanding the amount of space that you need in the part that requires the variance is pretty big. And that's the only place you can put the mechanicals. That's the only place you can put this elevator. To me, it seems that's not the, I don't know, but is there a way to take space that's already there and repurpose it? Those dormers that come out? I mean, you want to add on to this building, I get it. But my question is, can you, and I know that you want an elevator, which I don't know what to say about that. Someone maybe should have thought about that before purchasing the house, but okay, here we are. But it seems to me that you're adding to the nonconformity to a great degree, showing us this schematic in front of us. That's where you're putting everything, right?
Everything is going. Josh, maybe it's best if you answer that question as far as the reason why we're putting it here in this location. We explored other alternatives in our application with the Architecture Review Board, and because of the post-tension concrete, interior construction of the elevator is not really practicable.
Well, there's also yeah, and that's correct. I mean, there's a practicality side to this, given the actual construction methodology that was used, but there's also an avenue there that's about making it efficient for the person getting into the elevator. For instance, this elevator starts at the outside, meaning somebody can get onto the elevator from the actual driveway court. Putting the elevator inside the house doesn't really allow somebody to get to the first, second, and half story without going through the house or climbing up steps or circumventing steep ramps in the driveway. So the reality of putting the elevator where we did with the small dormers, and as you can see here, I'm going to just annotate them. What we're really doing here in adding these dormers, which I'll do in a different color for you now in orange so you can see the hoistway. Somebody's able to come from the outside, get into the elevator after parking their car, and then conveniently go up to the first floor door, second floor, a half story. So putting it inside the house would have certainly caused impractical issues with the construction methodology, but also this gives the ability for a user to get onto the elevator without having to circumvent other issues. So it's very much about mobility and accessibility, and that's part of the driving force. The Architecture Review Board, which gave us wonderful comments, we really did appreciate the process, and it took some time. And the reason it took some time is because we did study those, different options. We looked at many different ways. We, in fact, took the dormers down in terms of their overarching scale much more than originally proposed in order to, work with the Architecture Review Board in quieting its presence on the elevation. So that was part of it. We've spent some good time with them exploring those alternatives. But I think the accessibility part of this is the answer to the question. I think it's one of them that's very important.
Well, I get that it's important to the applicant. My question is that seems like your solution adds to the degree of nonconformity in a pretty big way. This is a zoning board, not a architecture board. So we have
if I could highlight these numbers right here too. This might be telling. The existing, if we were to study everything outside of today's sky plane, which I'll just highlight if that's okay in red right here. I've calculated this with our firm. We have 32,825 cubic feet outside of the total sky plane today as per the current code. And what we're asking for in sky plane relief and height relief represents, let's see here, 2,830 as opposed to 32,815. So I would just say that we've done our best job to keep that number very small when compared to how the building is set apart from the sky plane currently and what its level of nonconformity is if we were to do nothing. So again, those numbers are currently it's 32,825. That's nonconforming just based on the change of code, and we're asking for 2,830 cubic feet.
Well, that is a sad commentary on the height, but I hear what you're saying, and it's a good argument, actually.
And if I may, what we've done in designing it to avoid, because we talked about in front of the Architecture Review Board, we talked about massing, and I know this is not an Architecture Review Board, and I know Member Stevenson may want to is glad she moved on from her career there to the zoning board.
To the contrary.
No, okay, well, the design is important in that our determination that it's appropriate for the historic district really goes towards the fundamental tests and criteria for granting of a variance, and it's keeping and it's appropriate for the neighborhood. The historical structures, Architecture Review Board has said this is appropriate for the historic district. In that process, the neighbors to the east and west both supported the process, supported the application, and are supportive of the installation of the elevator. And in fact, this project will greatly enhance their quality of life, because as part of the application, the exterior illumination that's involved in this project is going to be greatly diminished. And that was found to be very important in front of the Architecture Review Board, because it gets rid of massing during the nighttime hours when things are lit. So we've changed that drastically, so they don't have that massing during the day. Probably during the night. During the day, the two dormers that you'll see from the street blend into are of the same material and blend into the roof. They're still subservient to the roof ridge and the gable that are there, and you don't have, and that's one of the reasons why the Architecture Review Board, approved it eventually, is because it does blend in with the house as it currently sits. It's just that it's been slid 3 feet forward to allow the elevator to go up behind it. Any change that the homeowner makes to this house on the second, or for a good portion of the second or second and a half story, will always require relief from this board as we go forward, because of the changes in code. There's no way around it based upon what has been changed in the code for lots of this kind. This house exists and it was legally constructed. So we did our best to blend it in with what's going in, that the Architecture Review Board found that it was appropriate for the historic district. The neighbors were supportive of the application. In getting, and again, this is what we're doing this for, is for an elevator for mobility access reasons, which is, this board should give deference to, because as we all get older or have injuries to knees and things like that, walking stairs becomes an issue for some people, and that's one of the reasons why the applicant wants to make it available to himself and his guests to have mobility access to all levels of the home.
Do you have letters of support from the neighbors?
We have emails that were support from the ARB, and we can definitely supply them if this board will leave the record open. We'll definitely supply them to this board as well.
Yes, we'd appreciate those.
So I have a few questions. Yeah, letters of support from the neighbors would be great to see. What's the how are you guys on GFA? What's the existing, what's the allowable, what's proposed?
I don't have those numbers. Josh, you have those numbers offhand?
Yes, the total floor area of the house is 7,135 square feet with a max allowable of 7,388. Our proposal falls underneath the max allowable GFA, and also our half-story guidelines also are intact, considering the height of the dormers being less than the required 7.5 feet.
So, okay, that third story is fully habitable, right? It's the master suite.
It's a half story.
It's a half story, yes.
So the top story that is habitable is the master suite?
Yes.
Okay. So habitable heated space.
Yes.
Do you think that should be counted towards GFA?
It's a half story.
Is it livable space?
Yes.
Is it livable
yes.
space?
It's the master suite.
It's part of the calculation in itself.
Yes.
It's included in that number.
So you're adding dormers to the master suite?
No, the dormer to the west, which is housing the elevator, is flanking the master closet and continues onward to make its entrance into the half story via a common room on the half story.
And on the east?
On the east is not accessible from any part. It's housing mechanicals, only accessible via an access hatch.
Yeah, so, okay, so I'm gonna run through my whole list. I do think we need to take a closer look at your gross floor area as it's actually being used.
Luke, to your point, could you submit your certification with respect to GFA to the building department?
Yes, we can definitely submit that.
Go ahead, Luke. I didn't want to interrupt you.
No, that's okay. I'm sensitive to this property. It's the renderings don't really give a sense of how close this actually is to the street. And being that it's FEMA compliant, it really does read as a 4-story building. So proposing to move closer to the street, I don't think is a great thing. And I think we're calling them dormers, but they're really not dormers. They're not gabled and they're not shed dormers like the application we saw previously. They are boxes, if I'm understanding the drawing correctly. And I think a rendering from above the main ridge looking down would really tell that story. Given the experience of the property, I don't think that the dormers, as you call them, are subservient to the main ridge at all. Yeah, I mean, you can start to get a sense there, but if we zoomed in and came up over the ridge, we'd really get a sense how this is like a 4-story postmodern pancake. So, massing wise, and to Susan's point earlier, I do think that this has a pretty large impact to the property and to the street. and I'm not sure it's a positive one. Can we go to A104, please? Actually, sorry, stop. Go back to 101.
One second, please.
Yeah, perfect. Josh, can you walk me through? You can zoom out. Can you walk me through what these spaces are used as right now? I imagine that the one space with the garage door is used to house vehicles. But what's going on to the right of the staircase, and what's the space to the left?
Let's see here, you have your storage 004, which is mechanicals and storage. You have many, you have sanitary system inverts, you have geothermal wells, most of the bones and infrastructure to the house that is being used. And then you have your corridors and garage, and you have your additional storage and areas up to the staircase. And if Michael has anything to add.
What is the space to the left of the staircase, that large room?
It's just a storage area.
So if we went there and looked at it right now, it would just be a basement-y storage area, not a finished space.
What's that?
If we went there right now and looked at it, we would see it's an empty storage room, not a finished space, not a media room or anything like that.
I don't know. To tell you the truth, I've never been back that far in the house, but I can, we can look at that. I don't know how that's pertinent to the application, but
sure,
it would be only pertinent to GFA really, and if the architect certifies the GFA, I mean that's going to go a long way to letting us know about that.
Okay, now let's go up a floor. Okay, so we're kind of, I hear you on the post-tension concrete, and I agree that it would be expensive, but not impossible to break through the floor. So we're devoting a lot of area and a lot of program to staircases here. And I really wonder if this elevator could not be incorporated into the existing cores that are already there. And if you go up a floor, now we still have the original staircase. And now I guess we get into our staircase that's going to take us up to our master suite. Right. So, I mean, I do think there is opportunity for exploration of staircases through the existing openings. If we zoom in,
but we would still need variances for any of that space that was there. If we're changing that space into an elevator, we still would need variances.
Why?
Because it's still above the plane.
No, I think that you can get it into the main ridge without having to add anything on the roof. That's my point. The east-west ridge. So we're looking right now, we're looking at the north side of the house.
Correct.
So coming towards us is the north-south ridge. Yep. But this ridge, thank you, Josh. That's the main east-west ridge.
I know what you're saying. Unfortunately, just based on, we've studied this and many more versions of how to get an elevator into the building, and again with the Architecture Review Board, essentially putting an elevator shaft through here or through the corresponding ridge on the west side displaces the very important kitchen and staircase. And granted, I know that those are all choices from the applicant's perspective, But again, part of our balancing test, not for this board, but for our own measures, was to look at what is going to be less in terms of an impact on the living spaces as they exist. Cost is obviously a factor, but not the most important one. And two, what I mentioned to Susan before was that the accessibility factor from the driveway court, being able to enter this not at the basement or the first floor or the second floor, but at grade. That's the mobilization, that's the mobility, that's the accessibility component that in our own balancing test, that holds the most water, because it allows the occupant or his guests and her guests to be able to get onto an elevator without having to circumvent staircases, ramps, sloped. Essentially, this entire house is buried at grade, and the only way into the basement is via a very steep sloped area. So to have guests and the client get to the elevator, that's at the foremost of our requests. That's why we've chosen to do what we've done.
Josh, can you show me on the site plan or the ground
Yes.
floor plan, the steep slope that you're talking about?
Yes. Okay.
Yeah, pass on the site plan. Let's go to the first floor plan.
Yeah, but did you want to see the landscape plan? What I meant?
No, I don't need to see that.
Okay, because this is how you get to the elevator. Let me go back to the. Okay, where would you like me to go?
Let's just start with the basement plan, like A201 probably. Okay. Okay, so we've got our garage door down at the bottom there.
That's right.
What slope have I, to get to that garage door, what steep slope have I experienced? A little downward slope to get into the.
A very much downward slope. Probably, when you think of sort of ADA compliance being 1 inch on 12, this is more 4.5 inches on 12. This is a very steep slope that can certainly be dangerous to try to walk down unless you're in a vehicle.
Right, unless I was driven in, and then I could get out of my car.
Unless you were, and then having guests who are also need the accessibility to be all circumventing down via, automobiles, is just, that became part of the impractical balancing test for our own design.
I mean, we don't really design houses for every guest who may come, right? This is really about the primary owner and his.
That, but it's about both.
I mean, I don't think that's a very good argument.
I agree.
I think that you really need to explore a less grand or theatrical stair circulation throughout the house, and minimize it a little bit and find a way to make the elevator work inside the existing core of the house.
I mean, look, I'm not saying there isn't a different way to do this. I'm just, on balance, trying to see why we might regard what they're asking as a significant detriment to the neighborhood.
Well, okay, so to me, I think we've got an extremely non-conforming house, Mark, and we're asking for a lot of cubic feet of relief, regardless of what sort of relief there exists on a technical basis. The new relief is still significant to me, and its move towards the street is already adding more of an imposing view than what is already a very imposing and tall 4-story house.
But the move towards the street only increases 590 cubic feet. The move to the street is 3 feet, and
but
that
I understand where you're going with that, but if you're on the street and you're looking at the house, that entire face of the house has come towards you, and the design that used to have what was kind of a nice brise-soleil now removes that, right? And it looks like you are proposing, Josh, spandrel panels of painted glass, which are probably going to be black or white or something.
They're actually in place currently. if you want me to, let me just pull that.
Yeah,
up.
let's go to that plan.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so currently, this is interesting. This was part of the Architecture Review Board process as well. And again, understanding that we have letters of support from the east neighbor and west neighbor actually wasn't the great accomplishment. I think the overall, what I'm about to explain in bringing these back painted glass panels and the major reduction in light is actually a benefit to, I think, all the village of Southampton, because it's not just the west neighbor and the east neighbor that experienced this house. It's everybody who drives down Meadow Lane and sees the house in its current condition in the evening that's very much lit up, which is now going to be drastically different. Part of that improvement to the streetscape on Meadow Lane is this right here, which is what your question was. The existing panels that I'm drawing right here at X through on the existing part of the house are back painted glass, so no reflection comes through it, only refraction of light from the lighting, which we're taking away. So by bringing out the front gable 3 foot 3 3/4 in order to allow for this elevator shaft to exist, we're also bringing out the back painted panels. So therefore, there is no reflection from additional interior light. So we're actually reducing the noise of the lighting in addition to taking 80% of the lighting on the house away completely.
So I'll take your point about the lighting, and that's not nothing, right? But I think that some people may call this like brutalist architecture in with this exposed concrete framing, and some of that three-dimensionality where the spandrels were pushed back, and you could see some interesting shadows and light along the daytime, and they were habitable. I mean, I see you have a little person up there on that porch, so you're now making what's a very aggressive piece of architecture almost more aggressive as the whole face comes forward, and as that relief, then that play of like front and back gets completely washed out. It starts to become very two-dimensional and a little bit more oppressive.
I'm glad you brought that up, because we actually did talk about that with the Architecture Review Board. And what is, I think, our saving grace in terms of preserving that shadow line is the fact that even though at the sacrifice of having a very shallow elevator cab, which will really house 2 people at a time, and people have to wait in line, or the clients just go up together and someone else goes a different way, that's fine. But part of that was preserving that shadow line. If you look at this elevation here, we have 1.10 feet of the exposed teak before the back painted glass. So you very much do get that shadow line, so it does not feel like a flat elevation. I agree with you 100% holistically. If that glass was actually coplanar to the facade structure, that very nice grid line, if you will, I would agree that you would lose something within the spirit of the vernacular. But because it's back 1.10 feet and the teak frame is allowed to breathe and turn the corner back, I think that we're trying to solve multiple problems without losing that sentiment for the design. But that, I mean, that's my opinion. It's
Sure. Hey, everyone's entitled to it. On F4, can you just use your cursor to show me where does the person stand when they walk into your proposed elevator?
I'm going to sketch that for you here, but for me to really show it, I have to go back to the landscape plan. So you park your car here and you come around this berm of grass, which is being preserved in order to create, you know, the nice soft elevation. We don't want the building to appear too tall. This is what currently exists now with all these nice cultivated boxwoods on the berm and slope back. So you actually go behind the berm. Let me just pull up the site plan here. Okay, and you can see it. Let me just zoom in with my fingers here, because this is a touch screen, so it definitely helps. Okay, so you park the car, you come out on this path, and you're in the elevator. Now that elevator is not at the basement. It's not at the first floor. It's in between the basement and the first floor, so that somebody can easily walk to it without circulating through, you know, unwanted conditions, get into the elevator, go up a half story to the front door, or continue up through the rest of the flight of the elevator. That's really at the heart of our balancing test for designing it here. It's about that accessibility.
As you make your way down that indigo colored corridor where the plantings are on your left as you travel, is there any slope to that?
Of 8.3%. It's a very gentle slope as opposed to the 34 or so percent slope down the driveway to the garage. It's a very
So we are allowing the user to, you know, change level a little bit.
well. This is almost as comfortable as an ADA compliant ramp. To a degree,
Right.
It's very shallow, very easy for somebody who has accessibility issues to get to that elevator, and also keeping the look of the house so that we're not making it appear far more vertical than, you know, it already does appear in terms of its design, by preserving all of this. So we thought at the time this was a very interesting way to solve that problem.
Josh, do you think your client would be willing to take another look at this and explore an option that makes use of the existing space?
I never like to speak for my client. Normally, I would say yes, and I'm not one for sticking my heels in the ground at all. I'm certainly, and also, you know, the people that have worked on this project are always, I think the ARB process, if you look at the 6 hearings that we spent there, we spent that time looking at all the options. And once we found something that the Architectural Review Board and the neighbors believed was within the character of the neighborhood, was within the spirit of the design, we found it. That's really where we are. So to go backwards and start from scratch again, especially since we've got the blessing of the Architectural Review Board, which takes a lot of aesthetic into account, even more than, of course, it should always be prevalent in all proceedings, but at the ZBA, you find a little bit less onus on the aesthetic as you would at the ARB. So I feel like we've accomplished so much with the Architectural Review Board. We've looked at this so many times. We've explored interior options, exterior options. We've modified exterior options. And I love the process. In fact, you know, I think we really benefited from the 6 hearings that we had with them. But, you know, going back to square one now, when we've already found something that is aesthetically acceptable to the neighborhood, it would be a little difficult for, I think, my client to hear.
Well, you definitely know your project, and I appreciate how well you were able to answer my questions. I'm still going to want to follow up on GFA, and you know, if the 3rd floor doesn't rise to the level that it needs to be technically counted towards GFA, then I also do believe, and I'm ready to be fact checked on this, that it can't be usable habitable space.
No, it's CO'd. It's CO'd as a half story of habitable space.
So don't you think it should be included in the gross floor area?
It is included in the gross floor area.
Okay.
Yeah, it's included in the calculation that he provided.
Oh, because Michael, I thought you said earlier that because it's a half story, it's not included.
No, I don't believe I said that. No, I was saying it was not a 3rd story. It's considered a half story. It's CO'd as a half story.
See, I just don't know how it's not CO'd as a 3rd story when it is a
because it meets the definitions of half story, where you have to be a certain percentage below the actual floor area of ceiling height above 7.5 feet, as opposed to half of it being more than 7.5 feet. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
So Josh, if you could, when you submit your GFA calculations, submit them with a breakdown per floor.
Yes, and I believe, Michael, correct me if I'm wrong, please. The GFA calculations that we started with are already on record with the building department.
Yes, but we can definitely provide that. We'll definitely provide that to the board.
I have a few follow-up questions to ask from the initial presentation that was made about this project tonight, including, I understand that since 2017, just 5 years ago, that both the zoning code has changed, but my understanding was that the FEMA requirements have also changed. Was that a correct understanding on my part?
The FEMA requirements as to,
I believe that you said at the outset of your presentation that both the zoning requirements have changed and there had been some change in the FEMA requirements.
no, the FEMA, no, the height requirement as it relates to narrow lots for elevated buildings as per FEMA.
Okay. Can you tell us specifically what those changes are and how out of compliance the building is now, and how much more you're asking for? That you may have articulated those separately throughout this whole presentation, but I'm looking for that, the FEMA piece. I'm also looking for the current plan and how much of a variance was either granted and in your preferred height with the plan that you've presented this evening. How out of compliance specifically will it be? And if you were to use the interior of the house for an elevator, how much additional out of compliance are you? Because our obligation is to protect the code only. So I really want to know specifically what you're asking for.
And that's all documented on these plans. I can walk you through them.
Please do.
Yes. So the overarching flood zone elevation of VE 16 has not changed in terms of the base flood elevation. I tried to zoom in the best I could to this area here. If we can pay attention to it, I'm just going to circle it in red. Okay. And you can see the velocity zone 16 BFE has not changed. What you can see is the existing part of your question, the existing height at 35 feet above the design flood elevation, which is 2 feet in addition to the base flood elevation, was what was previously allowed during the period in which we designed this building. What you're looking at currently, and this is a great chart that shows you the differences, is that with today's height regulation, you can see that the maximum allowable height is at civil 46, as opposed to where it was at civil 53. And you can see right here that we've actually given the board today a little sort of crib sheet on every exterior elevation where you can see the proposed max height of the 2 box dormers on the front gable are exactly 2'2" 3/8 of an inch above what would be the maximum allowable height today. And then the height of, let me just clear this back, the height of the maximum ridge, which is coming towards the street, allowable within its front yard setback, is exactly 7 feet above what would today be considered the max allowable height. And that is documented on every page of these elevations, along with the sky planes. And also, to answer the final question or clarification in that question, let me just pull this down. These are the metrics of what is non-conforming in sky plane, and each dormer and each roof on every elevation is annotated with its cubic feet of volume request.
And Julie, if I can answer your question a little bit, the local law that was passed by the trustees in the beginning of 2022 effectively lowered the height for this property by 7 feet. 5 feet of that was the change in height above the base flood elevation. So it used to be 35 and now it's 30. And you no longer get 2 feet of space, of freeboard essentially above the base flood elevation. So that calculation was taken out of the code. So effectively that's how this has been changed from a height of, I think it was 54, now it's, sorry, I don't have the numbers, but it was reduced.
Civil 53 to civil 46, or 35 feet to 30.
Right, so that's where it was reduced effectively by 7 feet from when it was constructed.
And
5 years ago, correct?
No, no.
Change was in 2022.
yeah, the change was just done a month ago or 2 months ago. If I may, the 53-foot height variance that we're looking for, which is the 4th variance that we're looking for, is actually it's the same height that currently exists for the peak. We need the variance because we're actually moving it. So it was determined that because we're moving that peak forward 3 feet, that we needed to apply for a variance. It's not going to change in height. It's still going to be at 53 feet. And then obviously the dormers are, require the 3 and, Josh, correct me if I'm wrong, 3 3/4.
3 foot 3 3/4 to make
Thank
way
you.
for the elevator, which is not even the full ask for the elevator, but it's what we have massaged it into the process of getting as small of an elevator as possible.
And I have a final question to ask. It's a lot of information to take in, and we receive comparable requests on other properties where people are looking to be able to accommodate needs after a build. And we just have to, I personally have to think this through a bit, but what are the required setbacks from the street? And this 3-foot extension that you're doing, will that exist within that setback?
Yes, we meet the front yard setback. Even pulling it forward the 3 feet, we meet the front yard setback of 80 feet.
Okay.
We're not asking for variance relief for front yard setback. It's only the height requirement and the pyramid.
My questions this evening. Thank you.
Josh, can you go to A301?
Yes, I can. Let me just.
And center the dormer, the gable for me.
Yeah.
Shouldn't we see where the man is standing? Shouldn't we see that dormer mirrored on the other side?
Yeah, this was specifically requested by the Architecture Review Board to show the existing versus proposed, which is why it's bubbled. So that, and this was actually part of the, I would say, the Architecture Review Board's balancing test and asking us to retreat the dormer a little bit lower. We actually started up here because, as you can see, this person standing here in the corridor that lets you off the elevator, you only have a clear height of 7'2". Now, I'm not a very tall person, but 7'2" is a little bit cavernous. And in a perfect world, one would say, I would like a corridor for my elevator that's at least 7'6" clear. But our client has, acquiesced to the good feedback from the ARB and has determined that, you know what, as long as I can get up there, 7'2" is not the end of the world. Now, the building permit that goes into the building department will have one here the same as that, but it was clearly shown as a before and an after to show how we were reducing the dormer even beyond what our original ask was.
Sure. Okay. And so the dormer that will be in the building permit sat on the east side that you just sketched in, that's proposed to be what sort of space?
That is only mechanical space, no standing room at all, only an access panel that is on the wall, and it is already loaded completely with geothermal pumps, HVAC duct returns, everything you can imagine. There is no space to go. It is only there. I know Michael has said that it's there to provide for additional mechanical. It certainly helps because we have to locate one component from this area where the elevator corridor is, but it's really there to balance the symmetry of the building and not move away from the spirit in which it was designed.
I understand.
So board have any other questions?
Luke, why don't we, if it's okay with the board, should we just leave this open for purposes?
Yes, is there a possibility, the renderings with the going up in the front that you all showed, that you showed at this ARB are deceptive because it's much steeper. This house sits up. No? Those. Where is that? That doesn't exist. Is there a way to make this accurate? You don't have to have the fanciest. I just feel like I'd like to actually see what we're talking about here.
I'm sorry, what doesn't exist? This is an accurate representation of what's there.
You think?
Yes.
You don't think that it's more sloped than that?
No, this is an accurate representation of what's there.
Yeah, Josh, I'm sure that it's modeled accurately, but you know, sometimes.
Would you like, and we can provide photos, you know, from
Oh,
the
that
street.
would be a great idea. if we
That would be
provided, you know,
really
a photo.
helpful.
Yeah, I think what we would really love to see are some really good photos walking up and down this driveway. And then I would really, really love to see a view of the rendering from above the ridge looking down, proposed versus existing. And I think that will really tell everybody on the board how massive of a lift this is.
Would it be acceptable instead of a rendering, an actual drone shot, and we can Photoshop the dormers in?
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine.
Yeah, we don't care.
Anything representative, that's totally cool.
I have nothing more. Can we just adjourn till the next meeting?
Yeah, I'll motion to adjourn for all purposes. The next meeting is that okay with you, Michael and Josh?
Yes, we thank the board for their time.
Thank you so much.
I'd like to say that Michael and Josh tried very hard to explain it, and I thought you did. You were very good at that. Thank you.
Yeah, you guys definitely have a handle on the project, so that's...
Yeah, we were, you know, we went through the process with the Architecture Review Board, you know, and that, you know, that process is what led us to this application and presenting you with this application. And, you know, it's definitely, you know, helped in making the project better. And, you know, I understand, you know, that this board seeing this as a number of applications that it has on tonight and hasn't had the opportunity to have six hearings in front of the Architecture Review Board with it to know it. So any information we can provide you, we're glad to.
Oh, Michael, final question. Were there any conditions on the ARB's approval? Was it conditioned upon anything that we had to say, or are you?
It's conditioned upon getting the variances from the zoning board of appeals.
Okay.
And, you know, as it, you know, we needed to have an application to present to you because without an approval from them, we don't know what variance we're actually looking for. And otherwise we end up in a ping pong position where we get bounced back and forth to the board.
Yeah, no, we've talked about that as a board, and I think you went the way we would have preferred. Anyway.
Yes, I think it's definitely it's definitely a preferable way to do it.
So in terms of the lighting, is that part of their?
That is part of our plan. It's included within our
the reduction in the lighting, not the increase.
Yeah, the reduction in the lighting.
And that is part of their decision that they voted on?
Yes, it's part of our.
Okay, thank you.
It's part of our submitted plans, and we definitely will be undertaking that with an approval.
Okay, because that's a big complaint.
Yeah, and you know, it's because of the change in ownership, you know, one's perspective changes in how your own property dovetails into the community. And I think that this is a nice opportunity for us to meet the community with really good changes that benefit, you know, Meadow Lane, not just the neighbors, but the people who circulate on Meadow Lane at night and also during the day.
Okay, you
And I'll
know.
point out that the board has an ARB decision in their packet.
Okay, thank you. I watched a couple of the meetings because the village also, the Dark Skies initiative, but I don't see how it's enforced. I realized this was built before they accepted that, but I'd like to be on a pace with making sure that that from now on that people pay attention. It's so bad for wildlife too, and this place is right out there on the ocean. So
Absolutely.
thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
No, thank you. Have a good night. So I'll motion to adjourn for all purposes, case number 3131, 40 Meadow Lane. Can I have a
Chairman,
second?
I'm sorry.
Oh, did we ask if
Sorry.
there's anybody in the
Yeah,
audience?
there's attendees. Is anyone here who'd like to speak to this application? No, doesn't look like anyone's raising their hand. So,
Are we good then, Jeff?
Yes, Chairman.
Okay. So I'll motion that we adjourn for all purposes, case number 3131, 40 Meadow Lane. Can I have a second?
Second.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, I think that brings us to the conclusion of tonight's public hearing. So I will motion to close the public hearing Thursday, March 24th, 2022, excuse me. Can I have a second?
Second.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Bye.